The newly built Exchange building is visible on the left in these early views up Market Hill, looking towards the corner of Shambles Street and Church Street, during demolition in the early 1930s to make way for the new town hall. Work was well underway too on the construction of the new Mining and Technical College on Church Street. In the background can be seen the old manor house, which was also to be demolished. The mayor and civic dignitaries gather for the laying of a foundation stone, and amongst them, wearing the flat cap, is Herbert Smith, the famous miners' leader of the time. Foundation stones were laid for both the Mining and Technical College and the Town Hall during this period. Once all building work was completed, the population of Barnsley turned out in their thousands to welcome the Prince of Wales, later to be Edward VIII, as he arrived to formally open the Town Hall on the 14th of December 1933. To further celebrate the occasion, the Barnsley chop was prepared and distributed amongst the crowds. Some of the flourishing businesses of this era included Brady Webster and Son on Cheapside, Benjamin Harrell and Sons could be found on Eldon Street, as could J.A. Bell, wireless dealer. And Celia Taylor's Cafe Royal and Bakery. Guests were on the corner of the Arcade and Market Hill. Butterfields and Masses were also situated on Market Hill. Harrell's stores, not to be confused with Harrell and Sons, were established in the White House on Shambles Street and sold a wide range of goods, including furniture. Huddersfield Road was the location of Air Brothers Garage. And Fox's Brewing Company ran the Queen's Hotel on Regent Street. From the very early days, the name of Barnsley has been synonymous with the mining industry, and in 1919 Mr. R.J. Plummer founded a company to supply the industry with one of its most vital pieces of equipment, the miner's safety lamp. This company was SEAG. A safe lamp meant life or death to the miner, and some of the safest were manufactured here at this factory, which produced cap lamps as well as miners' lamps. SEAG also made the famous Lumax bulbs for a wide range of applications, including motor vehicle lamps. Here we see the machine shop with all the machines running from the line shaft. The bulbs were exhausted and sealed and tested in several ways before packaging. Some components for the product were dipped in the plating shop, whilst in another part of the factory the Gelac batteries for the miners' lamps were manufactured. The company cared well for its workforce, and from under the shadow of the old London, Midland and Scottish Railway Line bridge, the employees went home tired but happy at the end of a long day. There were great celebrations in towns and cities across the country for the coronation of George VI, and Barnsley was no exception. One man who had his work cut out for him was the Mayor, Alderman Joseph Jones. On Monday, the 10th of May, the first visit on the Mayor's itinerary was to take tea with the matron and staff of the open-air school at Mount Vernon. He then called in at the Baths Hall, one of the 4 halls where tea was being provided for unemployed men. On Tuesday, free shows were given at cinemas in the town for the unemployed, whilst the Mayor, Mayoress and others helped present souvenirs to the wives of the unemployed at the Methodist Church in Lundwood. On the evening of the coronation, a beacon was lit at Monk Bretton, part of a nationwide chain. And earlier in the week, the illuminations had been switched on at the town hall. The official civic coronation service was held at Pitt Street Methodist Church, which has since been demolished, on Sunday the 9th of May. And after the service, the parade made its way down Pitt Street and into Peel Square, before the long walk up Market Hill to the Town Hall and War Memorial. After the formalities were over, the dignitaries posed for the camera. The following Saturday, a special coronation display was put on by the market stall holders, and competition was fierce as to whose was the best display. The Mayor and his party had a busy and difficult time judging the stalls. After much deliberation, the winners were finally chosen, and the Mayor presented the winning stall holders with certificates of merit. The following day saw the parade of ex-servicemen through the town, and the Mayor received the salute at the War Memorial. After the parade, souvenir mugs were presented to the ex-servicemen at the Rayleigh School. This was followed by rousing speeches and applause, the singing of the national anthem, and cheers for their new King and Queen. One of the last of the civic duties of the celebrations took place at the Kendry Hospital on the 18th of May, when the Mayoress presented certificates to the nurses. After a short speech, the Mayor opened the new coronation pavilion and a blessing was offered by the Reverend Green. Trees were planted to commemorate the event, and so ended a hectic week in the history of Barnsley.
From Wakefield, the Royal Progress continues to Barnsley. The Mayor, Mr. Joseph Jones, welcomes their Majesties at the Town Hall, where presentations are made. Then the King and Queen proceed to an inspection of the Mining and Technical College, where the most up-to-date training in the town's industries is given.
For the visit of Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh on Wednesday the 27th of October 1954, the preparations had been going on for weeks, and now, finally, the decorations were being erected in the streets. A fierce storm on Tuesday almost ruined the good work, but Wednesday morning was fine and the crowds gathered early to welcome Her Majesty. Finally, the Mayor made his way down Regent Street to welcome the Queen, and the crowds buzzed with anticipation. This was the moment for which all Barnsley had waited as the Queen proceeded up Regent Street from the station. As the royal party arrived at the platform, the royal standard was broken at the flagpole on the town hall. After presentations to the local dignitaries, a choir of school children sang for the Queen, and after the playing of the national anthem, the Queen and the Duke left to continue their tour of South Yorkshire. The motorcade made its way down Eldon Street and also Kendry Street to Mayday Green. Eldon Street was a popular viewing point in 1975 when the Queen and the Duke paid another visit to the town. Various organisations formed up in the Civic Hall, which was also a good vantage point to watch the proceedings. This time, the Queen had come to visit the new South Yorkshire County Council headquarters and later the new market before departing in the royal train. Edward Sheerian School was the first post-war secondary school to be built in Barnsley, with H.P. Lockwood as the first headmaster. Many dignitaries were invited to attend the opening, including the Reverend Heenan and the Mayor, Mrs. M. Brannan. speeches were recorded at the time, and some of the sentiments are reproduced here.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the official opening of the Edward Sherian County Secondary School. The Edward Sherian Secondary Modern School is the first secondary school to be opened in the county borough since the various schools were completed in 1933. I will try and amplify the general details about the school as contained in your brochure. The fact that this is the first secondary school to be built since the war does not mean that the Education Committee has neglected its duties. Immediately after the war, the great need in the borough was for additional primary accommodation, and no fewer than 10 new primary schools have been opened in the borough since 1948. The need now is for additional accommodation for those pupils born just after the end of the war, 1945, 1946, and 1947, who have now reached secondary school age, and this school is the first of a number of new secondary schools planned for the borough and in course of erection. The Edward Sherian Secondary Modern School provides secondary...
Although the school is still functioning, these buildings were demolished in 1993. Many of the parish churches around Barnsley had widely spread flocks, and Falkirk decided to do something about it. A proud moment, driven by the vicar, the new bus approaches the parish church for the dedication ceremony by Canon T.H. Cashmore. After the commissioning service, the bus was ready to gather the flock every Sunday. In later years, another bus was purchased, and this time it was blessed by the Bishop of Wakefield, a fitting choice as the Reverend Eric Treacy was famous in another role as the author of many books on transport. On the 27th of April 1963, the York and Lancaster Regiment was accorded by deed of grant the freedom of Barnsley, giving the regiment for all time the traditional right to march through the streets of the borough with bands playing, bayonets fixed and colours flying. The regiment, who drew many of its ranks from the Barnsley area, was paraded at Church Field and then marched down St Mary's Gate into Church Street and past the Town Hall down Market Hill, along Eldon Street, past the Magnet Public House, then to Kendry Street, Mayday Green and Cheapside. Passing the corner of the old bus station, they marched up Regent Street and past the old billiard hall, turning right along Eastgate. As they marched down the side of the drill hall, St Mary's Church spire was to be seen behind them. The men were dismissed on the parade ground at the rear of the drill hall, and afterwards free beer and sausage rolls were provided by the corporation in honour of the occasion. The Mayor, Mr Harry Dancer, and officers of the regiment arrived to join in the festivities. Barnsley has always been a great town for parades, and miners' banners have frequently been seen passing through the town. In 1969, the Mayor's Centenary Parade was a grand affair, with companies from all over the town providing floats of all manner and description. This was in the days when everyone shopped at the Co-op. Wombwell too had its fair share of parades. This Whit Monday parade featured contributions from Wombwell Salvation Army Band, Lund Hill Sunday School, Broomhill Methodist Church and Wombwell Church Lads Brigade, whilst a civic Sunday parade was led by the chairman of Wombwell Urban District Council, councillors and members of the local Labour Party. The 60s was seen by many as a time of change, and many of the fine old buildings in these pictures were soon to disappear in a wave of redevelopment. The Market Inn was soon to be demolished, and here we see possibly the last footage of the famous Barnsley for Bargain sign.
Take a plane, take a car, or even take a long walk, and if your bearings are right, you will arrive in a busy Yorkshire township on the eastern slopes of the Pennine Range. But for the present, why not just take a bus? A number 14 would do, and come with us to Barnsley. Our township lies some 19 miles to the south of Leeds and 14 miles to the north of the steel city of Sheffield. You could say Barnsley is closely akin to a supermarket with a county borough status, and thousands of people coming and going take advantage of one of the finest bus services in the country. Barnsley's 8,000 acres has a population of over 75,000 and also serves a busy industrial area of another 250,000 people. The town makes a natural shopping centre for the villagers around, and to this largest open-air market in the north of England come thousands of shoppers every week. For visitor and resident alike, Barnsley Market has much to offer. Something for the young, something for the not-so-young, something for everyone. Bananas by the bunch, apples by the pound, or it might be a bargain remnant to make a dress. And then again it might not. Local Olympic medalist Dorothy Hyman looks at some cups. Definitely not the race-winning type she usually collects. It was in 1249 that a charter was granted by King Henry III to hold a market day each week on a Wednesday. Where the thousands throng these days, it is worth recalling that when this charter was granted, it was likely that the customers did not number more than a few hundred, and only that on a fine day. It is by the way of Market Hill that a first glance is caught of the imposing headquarters of local administration, the Town Hall. It was a part of the celebrations to mark the Golden Jubilee anniversary of the granting of the county borough status to the town that a civic service was held in the parish church, followed by a parade through the town of representatives of virtually every local society and organisation. The people prayed and then paraded. The people's thanksgiving for half a century of prosperous self-government was also practical. For what better way to say a happy birthday to your hometown than to add to the collection of a civic silver plate? Barnsley citizens chose to show their solid faith in the future of their town by donating solid pieces of silver, not as mementos of a glorious past, but for use well into the future when entertaining guests of the county borough. First citizen of the town, it is the mayor who also presides over the monthly meetings of the town council. The symbol of authority, the golden mace, is carried in procession ahead of the robed mayor and the bewigged town clerk. It is not forgotten, however, that unless talk inside the council chamber is not converted into action outside the chamber, then it is all just so much hot air divorced from reality. And for most people, reality starts with a solution to the problem of finding somewhere to live. But not just somewhere to live, it has to be somewhere fit to live. And so the old dwellings come down to make way for the new. It is recorded the spot on which stands the town of Barnsley was in early times one immense forest, where the early Britons found shelter in caves and hollow trees. A far cry indeed from the 3-bedroom houses today provided by a council which started building homes in 1920 and which is now the biggest landlord in the town, drawing an average of 32 shillings a week from each of their 10,500 houses. Housing means homes. Homes means children. Children means schools have to be provided. Schools such as these, which provide primary and secondary education for some 14,000 children between the ages of 5 and 16. Barnsley is meeting this challenge of the future by spending over half of her income from the local rates on education. It is recognized as a vital investment in the national economy. The College of Technology, with 6,000 part-time and full-time students, was opened in 1932. The latest development was the opening of extensions which cost well over £500,000. In this march of progress, the needs of the community are well served and safeguarded by the town's own police force, whose members are here seen moving out of their old headquarters into premises more worthy of the important role they have to play in a modern society. The new police headquarters building is one of the key units in a bold imaginative programme which will provide a whole series of new public service buildings in a civic centre development project. It is from this ever-alert nerve centre that calls for assistance are answered. The speed of this help is hastened by the fact that the sister fire and ambulance services are housed in one of the most modern fire stations in the country.
Barnsley Fire Brigade. Control calling. Warehouse fire, Summer Lane, Barnsley. Warehouse fire, Summer Lane, Barnsley. Warehouse fire, Summer Lane, Barnsley. Warehouse fire.
seconds of the alert being received, the emergency service vehicles, whether an ambulance or fire tender, are manned and on their way. Within minutes, they can be on the spot of any accident or fire incident occurring anywhere within the boundary of the town. Completing the circle of community care is the town's hospital service, which ranges from this general hospital, which bears the name of its founder, to this modern haven for the aged sick, which has risen like the phoenix on the site of a much older hospital. And on the drawing boards are plans for a new £9 million hospital. But what really makes this town of ours tick? The answer is coal. Coal and its byproducts. It is from the impurities left from coal after treating for coke, which mainly include coal tar, light oil and ammonia, are derived dyes, explosives, perfumes, antiseptic, plastic and man-made textiles. It is true that the changeover from a purely agricultural to an industrial community began with the manufacture of wire about the 16th century and was followed by the introduction of linen making in the middle of the 17th century. But there is little doubt that Barnsley owes special thanks for her prosperity in the 20th century to the presence of the rich coal-bearing seams beneath her boundaries. Before this date, it is feasible that our ancestors, while aware of the presence of the mineral, made no great effort to work it because they had a plentiful supply of wood near at hand, and which was easily obtained. Today, Barnsley is the centre of the Yorkshire coalfield, which has the biggest potential in the country, and which provides employment for nearly half of the male population in the locality. This prosperity has not been gained without a price paid in the lives of men who toil in the bowels of the earth, with death and danger as their constant companions. Let us freely admit that the miner's job is a grim one, but let us also agree that the very nature of his calling has helped to mould within the character of the Barnsley miner those saving attributes of grit and gumption and greatness. No wonder that the figure of a miner with pick in hand is given prominence on the coat of arms of the county borough. His companion figure is the glass blower. The place he has earned for his trade is second only in importance to the mining industry in Barnsley. You take a giant-sized pinch of some silicate, add the right proportions of lead potassium carbonate, mix them with selected metal oxides according to knowledge gained from generations, and then place the mixture in the biggest and hottest oven ever seen outside any kitchen. In the control room, careful observation must be made to maintain correct temperatures to the molten glass. This dial reads over 1200 degrees centigrade, the temperature required. And there you have the molten mass, which almost magically, well, with the aid of machines, becomes a bottle. The fully automatic multi-mold machines, which work alongside the semi-automatic forming machines, turn out thousands of bottles every hour. Here at just one of the 3 major glass firms in the town, containers are special design or handmade to obtain the high quality demanded by the best known houses in the perfumery and cosmetic trades. The machine has not yet been made, however, which can combine the skill and dexterity and know-how which is required in the shaping of the intricate patterns of glass tubing made to the special order of science and medicine. Here the hands of the humans are still the indispensable instruments of a trade whose products are in demand throughout the world. Another local industry which lists most of the countries of the world on its order book is that of loom making. Proud craftsmen still mould and shape the many pieces which go into the complicated process of ensuring that the warp and weft work in sweet harmony when the looms come out of the assembly shop. Supplying the power units which keep many wheels turning around the globe is the local unit of a firm of electrical motor manufacturers. This is just one of the variety of industries which have been introduced to the area in the post-war years as part of the local priority policy of providing employment opportunities of a non-mining character for the menfolk and for more than adequate reservoir of women and girls seeking work. Here at this modern factory, the nimble fingers of the girls are ideally suited to that branch of electrical engineering of which the end product, after a variety of processes, is the electric motor. But one must not be misled by the picture we have so far painted in tones of black and grey of a town in its working clothes. For when it comes to putting on her best clothes, she can compare in beauty with the best. The smoke, grime, dust and dirt of the workaday world can soon be forgotten by a visit to the Lock Park. This 40 acres of greenery was opened in 1862 as a memorial to the famous engineer Joseph Locke, whose name is linked with many engineering feats at home and abroad, while the tower which dominates the horizon was built to the memory of his wife. An acquisition on behalf of the townspeople of much later date was the country house and parkland of Cannon Hall. The house, now an art gallery and a museum, and the park and its waters are a popular rendezvous for art lovers, artisans at ease and anglers. For those who like a little more action, either a spectator or player in their off-duty hours, there is a game with a small ball which has to be hit, and the game with a bigger bouncing type of ball which has to be kicked. Barnsley's principal sporting interest, at any rate during the winter months, is the 3rd Division Association Football Club, whose home is Oakwell. Formed in 1887 under the name of Barnsley St. Peter's, the club has had its ups and downs over the ensuing years, up into the 2nd Division, but also down into the 3rd. But one day in 1912, the club was really on the upgrade, for it carried off the premier trophy in English football, the FA Cup. So this is the kaleidoscope which goes to make up this town of Barnsley, mentioned in the Doomsday Book on 1086, called Black Barnsley by author Daniel Defoe. Made a county borough in 1913, the town now looks forward with confidence to the future. Black Barnsley, bustling Barnsley, boomtown Barnsley. Call us what you will, but whatever you care to name us, we who work and live here are happily content to call it home.